Okay, so now that I finished my lovely 90s eyebrows, it's time to move on to lips. So just kind of to recap the eyebrow situation here. So from further away, I think it definitely is pretty effective. Like you can obviously see on this side where I use like my normal eyebrow pencil color and kind of went more with my natural brow. They're much larger. It is a very different world over on this side of my face, and then you come over here. My skin is still very natural, everything's very natural, and then it's like, hello, eyebrows, right? It's very 1920s, but I think you can obviously see that it's a lot thinner, but when you get closer, you can actually see that like I still have quite a bit of hair, and I hardly have any eyebrow hair either. So that just shows you like really, if you haven't looked at a lot of pictures of people with thin brows from the 90s, look it up because their brows were, I mean, they were shaved off. They were like just drawn on lines. So I didn't fill any of this in, but because I'm going to be so far away if I was on stage, it's still going to be pretty effective. To look pretty thin like this. You could have somebody cover their brows. A lot of people do have shaved brows now, but if not, I have found that if I just kind of like ignore that part of the hair and just kind of like highlight around it, and if I use something that's darker than my natural color, usually that draws enough attention away that I don't have to worry about kind of that like effect looking too crazy. Because if I was really up close to people the whole time, yeah, they're obviously going to see I have like a double eyebrow situation going on, but from further away on stage, it'll definitely be really effective. So really quickly before we get into lips, I actually want to touch on like body shimmer and body glitter. So that is something that you see a lot in the 90s, and probably you're just going to see a lot in any kind of like fantasy like moments, like fairy moments, like if you're working on Midsummer or something like that. It's probably just going to be used a lot in musicals and plays. My best advice on that, just please don't give someone like loose glitter. I've given people loose glitter. It has ended up in just piles on the table, and I've watched them use it out of piles, and that's so unsanitary, and it's just not clean in general. And I just think it's just so much easier for everyone if you can just give somebody something that's already mixed together that's a glitter. Luckily, we're living in a time where there's a lot of options for that. Like, there's still like roll-on glitter, like there was in like the 90s and early 2000s. You can buy like glitter powders that they can dust on, like a highlighter. You can get like glitter gels. Those really hold up well, especially if somebody is sweating a lot. There's spray glitters. Those aren't my favorite if they're meant for hair. I think they're a little bit too drying and tight for skin. But I've seen people do it. I know people that use it as highlighter. Not for their everyday lives, for performance, but still. And then another tip, if you really only have loose glitter, if you could just mix it, like if you mix it into like a lotion, you can usually make like a nice like shimmery body lotion that way. Sometimes it feels like a little bit itchy when it's on, but they're probably going to feel itchy anyway if they're wearing body glitter everywhere. But if you at least do that and you have that pre-mixed for somebody, it's a lot less likely that it's going to end up everywhere or it's going to end up all over costumes. So I really caution you if you are getting into the trend, because eventually, I mean, we probably don't have that many shows right now that are based in the 90s, but eventually you are probably going to get to a point in your career where you're going to start seeing things with like 90s themed clothes, and it's going to be just like us if we were doing like a 1950s show or something. So it is something that we kind of have to get used to if you are looking to get things to be more of like that authentic pop star 90s look that everyone is after with the beautifully groomed eyebrows. But yeah, it's something to definitely keep in mind. If you're going to be putting any kind of glitter on the face, I would keep it really just to like eyes and like kind of like highlighted areas. If you put it down the center of somebody's face, just like if you put your really shimmery highlighters, like which you'll probably see me do a lot, you look really oily and sweaty, which I kind of do right now because I do that anyway. So it's not the best. You can really use my face as an example for that. Today's not too bad, but if you put on too much highlighter, especially when you get on stage under the lights, you're just going to be really like greasy looking, and I feel like people don't believe me, but then you see somebody and that might be another moment where you just have to like take them out there and be like, I know you want glitter down the center of your face, but this is what it's going to look like. And usually that's enough to kind of get somebody to like understand. So far as our lips go, the 80s we're going to keep it like a little bit more normal, and it's just going to be like a really bright fuchsia, because in the 80s they did mainly like reds, pinks, fuchsias, corally, orangey colors. Madonna wore like a lot of red. Like she would honestly probably wear like red to go with this. But I have a really bright fuchsia lip stain, so I was going to use that. Again, if you go like matte or lip stains when you're on stage, or you can like set your lipstick with a little bit of powder. And like I said, like in an earlier video, if you just take like a tissue with a little powder and blot it over, that can set a regular lipstick and kind of make it like a matte for stage. Those are going to last longer, and so if somebody is like talking a lot on stage, or they're singing, or they're eating and drinking, or like they have to kiss somebody, if you go with something that dries down or something that is like naturally dry like a matte, it is going to be a little bit more likely to stay on more easily. than something that's like a creamier lipstick or like a gloss. And these aren't necessarily, in the 80s they would do some gloss, and there's like frosted lip glosses in the 90s, but it's not like devastating if someone's not super glossy for these two periods. So you could probably get away with something being like a little bit more matte. So for this side, I'm just going to do just like a normal, like nudish, like lip liner. Just, I don't have a fuchsia one, but the nude is usually enough to kind of like clean up the lip a little bit and just kind of keep it in place. Typically with lip liner, I fill in my entire lip and then I put the color over it. That'll be okay for this side, but on the 90s, we're going to do the classic 90s lip trend, where we would have really dark lip liner and then we'd have lipstick that is lighter, and we do not blend them. So it is not like the lovely like ombre lips that we see that are trendy right now in 2020. No, it is just very much like, here are my lips, I drew them on, here is a color that I put over that, and I did not blend it. So that's what I'm going to recreate for you today, and I'm going to use the same color that I used on my eyebrow, because the pencils that I have are both brow and lip safe. Not every color, so remember, like I talked about in previous videos, always make sure that it's a color that is safe to use, and if it's not, make sure that whoever you're using it on, if it's yourself, like I said, it's whatever, if you're going to take it right off, make sure they're either okay with it if you have to use it, or I would just opt not to use it. And use something that is lip safe. But a lot of times if it's like an eyebrow pencil, it should be okay to use on lips. Usually the box or online or something should tell you if it's not. So the first step that we're going to have is we are going to line our lips with this lovely dark brown. That I would never do this in my real life, but in the 90s they were really into that like grungy kind of like darker like brownish reds and like mauve colors. There were a lot of frosted, like I do have a frosted lip gloss that matches this pretty perfectly that I could have put on, but I want it to be as true to the 90s as possible, and just because like I was saying, give it a few more years and we're probably going to have a lot more things that are like set in the 90s where these are going to be kind of the things that you have to do. So it's a good idea to kind of like learn it, and it's also a good idea to learn what not to do, because it is not the most attractive look on most people. So the first thing I'm going to do, just because I use this on another part of my face, is I'm going to sanitize it. So that means that you're going to like alcohol it off, and then I'm going to go ahead and like wipe it off and resharpen it, and then I'm going to alcohol it again. I alcohol things before I put them in the sharpener and after, just because I want it clean when it goes in the sharpener, but then also like I don't know if the inside of the sharpener is clean, because who knows who used it if it's like one that's in the shop. That's why I like to clean it again after. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And a note too, like on your eyebrows, you probably could go in with like a brow like pomade, or like kind of paint, and that would probably, like all the dip brow stuff would probably do like an awesome 90s brow, just because those are a little more suited to this kind of a brow shape. But just a note on that. Should have said that before, but I didn't. So again, and then I'm going to go with like a brownish, like reddish lip, sort of reminiscent of, again, like the picture that I mentioned that was like Reese Witherspoon, where she had this lovely like frosted look going on, but then still like the very like grungy 90s lip, which I think you see a lot as a lot of people in like pastels, but then also like the really like dark angsty lip color. So we're going to go ahead and go with that. So I'm going to take this darker color, and again, there's really not going to be any blending happening. It's just going to be there to line my lips, but typically I would like to fill in the whole thing, so that way it's so hard to look at yourself when you look like this in the mirror. This is so funny. And I'm putting this on the internet, so this is great. If anyone needs to blackmail me, this video is here for you to do that with. But yeah, so typically I like to fill in my entire lip, so that way I feel like if whatever my lip color is wears off, I at least have the lip liner. But for the 90s, that's not really going to work, because they did not blend everything together. So, and remember, we're going to do a lovely half and half. So this is going to be even more amusing than what it is already. I'm probably using, like, if you had like a coppery color, that would work well too. I think it depends on like whatever the inner color is, so I'm gonna use like a pretty like deep red, so I had to go with something that's pretty dark. If I was gonna do like a nude, I would probably actually go with like this eyebrow color and pick something that's a little bit more in that kind of a realm, just because this would be like way too dark, I would hope. But who knows, it's the 90s on someone with a complexion like mine, so I'm only doing this because I'm going to use such a dark red. And then I'm going to put my normal lip liner color on the other side, just to add to the fun. And so these two are going to blend together a little bit just because it's a creamier pencil, but I'm doing my best to not blend anything. And again, if you are trying to fill in your whole lip with lip liner, just remember if it's not really moisturized, it's going to be really hard to do that even with like a creamier pencil. So I always recommend put on a little bit of like, I put on Aquaphor chapstick, whatever it is that you use, put that on before you start your makeup so that by the time you get to your lips, it's kind of like settled in a little bit. So now we're going to add in our lipstick. So for something like this, I think it's probably going to be easier if you use a brush to apply the lipstick. So I'm going to do that even though like I have my own tube. This is my personal lipstick, so I could put it directly on. I just think it's going to be easier because I'm trying so hard to not blend it, and your natural inclination is definitely going to be to blend this, and you can't. So I think it is a lot easier to go in with like a really small brush and apply it that way. So that's the way I'm going to do it. And then for my other side, it's just going to be a lip stain. So for that one, I'm just going to use it directly because it is my own personal one. If I'm ever doing like a lip stain or like a lip gloss for theater, I don't like to give people those unless it's like their own personal that they can just have. So like I'll usually just like buy it for them to have, or I ask if they have one that they can use already, just because like you can't monitor makeup in a makeup shop every single second of the day. So like if I know that I always am sanitary about using this tube of lip gloss, I don't know what happens when I'm not there. So I just think it puts people at risk when you use things like that. And that's how I really feel about mascara for theater too. I would really prefer to buy every person a new mascara every show than ever hold on to one. But everywhere is going to be different, so just always kind of keep that in mind. That's why a lot of people don't like to work with like cream lipsticks, but sometimes I just feel like it's like the safer way to go. Or finding like a cheaper like lip stain or something if that is the way you want to go, which they do make plenty of those now. But yeah, just always be really careful sanitation wise. So I'm going to add this on. And I might have to mix some other colors with it to get it to the shade that I want. But, because I think it's still a little bit too normal red for this look. So I'll probably add something like a little bit browner over it. And so it's probably going to like naturally blend like a little bit, but the goal is to not really blend it that intensely, but I am going to like pull the lip liner like with the brush like in towards the center of my lip, so that like blends it, but you can still have like the definition, just so that way, because I don't feel like this red is totally the perfect red for this. Is there a perfect red for this look? I don't know, but I don't think this is it, so I'm gonna kind of blend them, but I still have that lovely definition, and I'll probably go back over it and work and redefine that too. And then I'm gonna go back in with that brown, and I'm gonna just kind of like work on defining that just a little bit more, because I do feel like it did kind of get blurred away a little. And then you can kind of rub your lips together and it'll blend it a little bit, but you still want to make sure that you do really keep that like darker edge on it. But the more that you kind of do that, it's going to get it more into like the correct world for the look that you're doing. Again, I'm just going to go like back and forth between the two because, like I said, your natural inclination is going to be to really blend it, and that's definitely what's happening. So I'm still going to try to keep it pretty pronounced, the like brown shade. I think we're getting there. We're definitely feeling very 90s on this side of my face. And again, I'm just going to kind of keep blending and just layering the colors. And then if anything ever like kind of blurs out like that, I'll usually just go back and like touch it back up with whatever my highlighter was. I think that's pretty good. Pretty terrifying, but it's much less terrifying once you kind of start to blend it a little bit. And sometimes too, this is one of those things where like period is important, but ultimately when we're doing stuff for stage, you want people to like look attractive too. So if it helps a little bit to like blend it a little, someone probably wants you to opt for that rather than someone look like totally awful, unless like they're supposed to kind of look that way. But I think you definitely still get like the very 90s effect without it being quite as like intensely like dark brown. So yeah, so kind of like take everything and kind of like adapt it for like what makes sense with you. But if you saw this really up close, it is pretty terrifying. So now we just have to put the fuchsia on this side, and then we can kind of just wrap everything up.